Welcome to Board Gamers Anonymous, the podcast of board gamers and the insane fun we have over the last 8 years. This is Chris.
And this is Anthony.
And this is our special anniversary episode number 8 on episode 339. Our happy anniversary episode. Happy anniversary, Anthony.
Woo! Yeah, 8 years. That's
no.
a number. It's not quite 10, but it's more than 5. Yeah.
It is that, my friend. And there's a lot to talk about here, but obviously we did it. If doing it is 8 years of a thing,
It is.
Then we have done those things.
It means we are 80% of the way to a much more impressive number with 2 digits. We're getting there.
Well, I mean, 8's got 2 zeros if you turn sideways. I don't know. So
Infinity if you turn it sideways.
It is, in fact, our 8th year on the podcast. And not just on the podcast, but of course, 8 years of events, 8 years of charity events in particular, 8 years of conventions, 8 years of programming, 8 years of YouTube videos, 8 years of streaming we've done from time to time, and just 8 years here with you as your friend at the table talking about the latest and the greatest in board gaming. So hopefully, that 8 years has gone great for you too, because again, we talk about this each and every week. Really, we're in this for you. We really enjoy having you at the table with us, to have a chat with us, to join us, to be our friends at the table, and talk about the most important thing of all time in the world, of course, board gaming, my friend. Board gaming.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I've spent an inordinate amount of time with my board games in the last 3 weeks, from packing them up to unpacking them to reorganizing them. I've not played any of them recently, but I've spent a lot of time with them, and I know what I own now very, very carefully. So it's fun, though. It's fun to look back over the last 8 years. We do this every year, and we look back over the last year in particular to see, in the last 12 months, what did we talk about? What did we really want to buy? What did we end up playing that we loved? And it's always a lot of fun because you look through that list, you're like, wow, we did a lot of stuff in the last year. And you forget when things happened or what you were talking about, or what was happening at the time. And this is our chance to kind of go back and discuss that and run through it and kind of redirect you back to stuff that is fun for us as much as you, hopefully.
Sure. And especially our feature reviews or our feature episodes. Those are pretty important because we really try to craft new evergreen content. So it's not the same top 10. It's not the same feature. It's not the same featured game. We really try to come up with ideas and concepts and philosophies and themes and critiques that hopefully will help you get the best games to the table, and also have a lot of fun with those games outside of gaming. Because again, so much of the games that bring us enjoyment not just for getting those games necessarily to the table, but to think about those games, talk about those games, as Anthony said, reorganize those games, move those games. Maybe there'll have to be an episode in the near future about how to move your board games, because Anthony just did it, and I'll be doing it in less than a month. I'm moving myself, so my collection will be moving. So we might have to do a how to move your board game collection safely.
I will say this. Home Depot recently changed the size of their small boxes. They don't work anymore for board games, so you got to go to Lowe's. You got to go to Lowe's or U-Haul. Those Home Depot boxes are out. Sorry.
Wow. All right. Well, that right there. Good note. See? Bringing the most important things in board games. Cardboard, man. It's cardboard.
Yeah, it was 16 by 12 by 12, which was perfect for this Ticket to Ride boxes. Now it's 11 by 11 by 17. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yes.
Come on.
Bad on you, people. Bad on you, Home Depot people, because for many reasons. Not just that.
Many reasons, yes.
Just another one of those reasons. So, yeah, hit up Lowe's for many reasons. They're better. But obviously now the board game boxes. So now I know, Anthony. Thank you, because I'll be boxing this and other things up relatively soon. So, yeah, that's great. So much to talk about our favorite from the past year. And I will say this at the end, but I'll say this also at the beginning in case you don't get to the end of the episode, but please do. Thank you so very much for your support, your friendship, your dedication to the podcast, and everything that you do to support BGA, getting our word, getting our message out there, getting board gaming out there. We're partners, we're friends in getting more great games to the table, but also getting more great people to the table. So, thank you so very much. Every time we hear from you, every time my Facebook thing pops that someone has just liked BGA for the first time, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or 800 other things, or as I torture Anthony to know how many listeners listened that week. That's important to me because the relationships are important to me. So, and I know it's important to you too, Anthony. So,
Absolutely.
thank you all for anything ever that you've done, even if it's just listening. Of course, thank you especially to our Patreon backers who help us financially make this possible. I know this has been a very difficult time for everyone, so we really appreciate the Patreon backers helping us financially support BGA for the last 8 years. We would not be able to be here financially if not for all of you. Everything that we're doing here and all of the upgrades and the videos and the streaming and the events and the especially the charity things that we do every year would not have been possible without your financial support. But everyone, you're doing so much, whether it's financial, whether it's sharing, whether it's telling people about the podcast or telling publishers or designers about us, because one of the things we also don't do, and this has been a recent thing inside the industry, is we don't take paid reviews. We work for the people that listen to the podcast who want independent, critiques and support of great board games, but we don't take money for that. And we try to always act as ethical as possible so that when you listen to the podcast, and we've heard this from you, you know that we're being straight with you, we're being honest with you, and that, someone's not filling our pockets in order for us to kind of give you a rosy review of something that's not great. Because there's nothing worse than spending money and getting a game to the table and just does not work. So again, thank you all so very much. It means so very much to us. Thank you for listening to the episode. This is 8 years. Let's go on to start of year 9, Anthony.
Let's do it.
All right. So what do we have up for our question of the week?
All right. So it's not the middle of the year really, but for us it kind of is. This is our middle of the year, and honestly, the month of July is a blur. I don't remember what happened.
There's time. When did time start being a thing again? I don't know what you're talking.
You tell me we recorded episodes, and I see them because I upload them to the internet, and then I'm like, I don't remember doing that. I don't remember saying that. I don't remember talking about that. Is that a problem? It might be a problem.
I don't even know what we're doing here.
But as a halfway point, in terms of releases at least, because of the convention season, which is still technically happening for some reason, I asked everybody, as we get into the latter part of the summer, what is your favorite game release of 2021 thus far? So we're talking about the whole last year, but I'm asking people to think about the last 7.5 months or so, which is fun because, especially with COVID, maybe we have some of these games, Chris, you and I, and we just haven't had a chance to play them yet. I know several of these I do have, and I just haven't been able to play yet because I don't have people to play them with, or we just haven't had a chance to find them because there are no conventions or whatever it might be. So it's fun to talk about these and, see what people are hyped about. So let's run through them. Andrew Chang says Imperial Classics and Legends. David Bator jumped in and said absolutely as well. I have these. I have not had a chance to play them outside of like some some basic solo stuff. So want to. Found them the other day, digging through my boxes. I'm going to play it soon. We'll talk about it. We've got Kyle, which is actually a friend of mine from Pittsburgh, which I had a chance to see before I left. Talk about Juicy Fruits. This was a game from Capstone Games, which actually looked really cool. And you talked about this a few months ago.
Yeah, it was Acquisition Disorder.
Yeah, so a bunch of people jumped in there. David and Andre and a couple other people said, yeah, this looks great. It looks amazing. And Kyle in particular, who recently got it, said, day one, they played it 5 times. So he's super hyped on that game.
Yeah, baby.
So now I want to try it out as well. Yeah. So Anders mentioned Oath, and Card Rails. Oath by a Mile is his favorite game of the year so far.
Nice.
I've only played Oath one time, and
Sure.
it was kind of like a mine came in 2 weeks before we moved. I'm like, we have to play this with my game group back in Pittsburgh before I leave because I'm the guy who has it. And we played it, and it was fine, but it was very evident that that game needs to be played at least 3 or 4 times before you can even begin to talk about it. So
Yeah.
I don't really want to talk about it. I had fun, but I don't know if it's good for me yet. So we'll get to it. Um, Shane mentions Adventure Tactics Domain's Tower. So
Okay.
I've heard a few people mention this. This was on Kickstarter a couple of years ago. This is basically like Final Fantasy Tactics, the board game, which sounds really cool to me, but it's also a big sprawling thing that's kind of on par with like Gloomhaven in terms of like a big campaign game. And I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. So I don't know. Maybe I'll meet somebody who has it at some point.
Mm-hmm.
David mentions Ankh Gods of Egypt. That just shipped to everybody like in the last month and a half or so from
Yep.
Simon. So he loves it. Just finished a game, wants to play it again. Really enjoying that. I want to play it. I didn't back it because I backed Kemet instead, which I also loved. But this is the problem with no conventions. Is like this is where I would normally play that. I would find a way to play it at a con, and now I just have to find somebody in my new home where I don't know anybody yet. Do you have Ankh? Do you have Ankh?
Yeah,
Definitely want to
I
try that
think
out.
technically or legally you were only allowed to own one. So
That's what I
it's
said. Yeah.
kind of weird
Yeah.
nonetheless. Mm-hmm.
So Carlos made a point. He said, I own 21 games published in 2020, but only 3 games published in 2021 so far. So ask me next year around the same time. Guess he picks things up a little bit slower, waits to see if anything's any good. Doesn't have
Jeez.
like that cult of the new that the rest of us have, where you just buy it before you know anything about it. AC Holt mentions Power Rangers, the deck building game, which I didn't know
Okay.
existed until a few weeks ago, but apparently it's a
You,
thing and people are all about it.
well, people love Power Rangers, man.
I know, yeah. Andrew mentions Beyond the Sun. Only played it on Board Game Arena, but played it a bunch of times. I really love Beyond the Sun. I know you and I diverged a little bit on opinions on that, but I enjoyed it a lot,
Mm-hmm.
both physically. I bought my copy back last December, I think, and online. And then a couple more here. John mentions Excavation Earth, and Tom mentions Coffee Traders, which very niche on Coffee Traders. I love it, but there's a very limited number of people I think who are going to love that game. So um, you heard my review where I was like, it's amazing, it's a buy, but just make sure you play it first because it's big and expensive, but it's great, but just for me, maybe. I don't know. So there you go. There are some recommendations from the BGA audience of their favorite games of 2021 or 2020. Yeah, 2021 so far. Um, I don't know which ones, if ours were 2020 or 2021 for later, we'll talk about, but uh, it's been an interesting year so far for many reasons, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into that.
Absolutely. All right, so that's what our listeners are talking about. Let's get on to our acquisition disorders, Anthony.
All right. So, for whatever reason, Capstone Games is just going to release every game they have for this year in the next 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So they put up another pre-order. I talked last week about Boone Lake. I mentioned briefly the Uprising from Maracaibo. The week before that, they put up Imperial Steam, which is a limited pre-order. And so their new one, which went up for pre-order a couple days ago, is Corrosion. And this is actually like way up there on Board Game Geek right now. It's either number 1 or number 2 on the hotness. Number 1 as we're recording this. I think yours is actually number 2, but it just popped up there yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a game. It's a brand new designer, Stefan Bauer, and it is a game in which you run a factory and you deploy the workers, the engineers, and you're trying to build an engine. It's an engine building game. But what makes it unique from other engine building games is that the engines are quite literal. Like you are building a machine, which means the more often you run that machine, the more often it corrodes and breaks down. Right. So each machine you build or each engine you build is going to have a limited amount of times it can run. It's going to break down over time. And they're calling it a temporary engine builder. So you have multiple different paths to victory. There are gears and different types of machines. And if you get the deluxe edition, you get the actual little metal gears to play the game with, which is pretty cool. And on your turn, you're either going to play an engineer card and turn the corrosion wheel of your factory. those are two different actions. And when you play the engineering card, you're going to be able to, gain new machines, upgrade them with different engineers, different abilities, all that cool stuff. And if you turn the corrosion wheel, you put the machines to work. You actually get them to do stuff, get the engineers back into your hand. So you're taking your workers back for future use. But again, those gears and machines start to break down a little bit. So, we're looking at, you're trying to build this up, and it almost reminded me a little bit in a weird way of like London, where you build up this whole tableau and then you activate it and then bad things happen to you. So you want to activate it at a time that it's as efficient as possible to activate it. I have not had a chance to play it on Tabletopia. It is up there. People can go and play it or get a chance to play it there. But yeah, I'm pretty excited for this. It looks cool. It has a solo mode. It has a follow action, which I know the designers talked about a little bit in terms of that was like kind of where he started with the mechanics. He wanted a game with a follow action. That does seem to make it a little long. Obviously no one's really played the physical version yet, but follow actions almost always make a game long. So, there's a couple of Lacerda games like that. We'll see how it does in terms of table time once it gets out. But I'm pretty excited about this. I was going to pass it first when they put it up because I've already pre-ordered a couple things from Capstone, and I'm like, I'm kind of at my limit. But watching the video, reading through the rules or like the rules summary, I don't know. I think they might have me on this one. So that's Corrosion, designer Stefan Bauer, Capstone Games, and Deep Print Games. And that is coming sometime this year. With boats being the way they are, who knows? But I think they said November, hopefully.
Yeah, I saw this as well, and this was going to go on my acquisitions disorder. The layout of the game, the pieces, there's just so I think you get to a point when you've played enough, board games that you can just look at a board game and you're like, I like that. There's just something about the way it's laid out and how it seems like it kind of it pulls together. The artwork looks nice. The graphic design seems nice and clean, and it seems to be a really interesting, concept to kind of move forward with. And yeah, Capstone does generally a very solid job with all of the games that they put out in that kind of genre, whether especially when it's new stuff. So I think Peckerspiel is on board with this too. So yeah, hopefully this designer is the new hip, kid out there. So really looking forward to it.
Yep.
So speaking about hip kids, the hippest of all kids, Anthony, he's our boy Vital Lacerda.
Yep.
Speaking of past moments at the table, I was like, oh my God, it's Vital Lacerda. I was like fanboying there.
So much.
Oh my God. I'm like, yeah, he's right over here. So yeah, and it's kind of funny too, because you go to these conventions and you get to see like all of these designers and stuff, and you get a little starstruck. It's kind of like it's really a weird kind of experience. It's like, I don't know. That's probably just a bigger discussion for another day. But yeah, Vital Lacerda, a cool guy. And somehow he keeps churning out the games. And I'm just always amazed that they offer such different complexity levels, and also the fact that thematically they're very different from each other. I mean, I love Uwe Rosenberg and I love Stefan Feld, and Feld's a little better on this, but like usually the games are around the same type of things. And Vital Lacerda goes out and finds a theme that no one ever thought about doing. So here I think he's going the most out there. Right. This is Weather Machine. I think we mentioned this briefly. It's about research, publish, and run a prototype to fix extreme weather that you just provoked. So imagine, if you would, Anthony, just imagine this for a second. It's going to take a little bit, but imagine there was yes, go deep. Imagine there was extreme weather in the world for reasons that we caused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who would do such a thing? Who would do that? Who would cause extreme weather on purpose when they knew what they were doing would cause extreme weather?
Yeah. So this might be an allegory for something, but probably not. So it turns out that you are part of a scientific team that creates a weather machine in order to obviously stop these catastrophes, but also give certain people nice sunny days, and so forth and so on. Everything you could imagine that a weather machine would do. Now, it turns out that when you mess with Mother Nature, she messes back. So there is a butterfly effect to when you mess or change the weather in one area, changes something else somewhere else. So you are here to create, design, run, and hopefully power a machine that's going to be able to save the world before the catastrophes, swallow it up by your own inventions. Now, what's really cool and amazing about this, we don't have a rule book yet, but they recently released a piece of artwork by Ian O'Toole, the cover here.
Yeah.
And I think Anthony said it best, where he said they finally let like Ian O'Toole like off the chain here, and they were just like,
Yeah.
do a thing.
Yeah.
And he did a thing, man.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most innovative, evocative pieces of artwork I've seen for a game box in quite some time.
I absolutely loved it. Yeah. A friend of mine in Discord posted it, and I like immediately I was like, oh my God. And I actually had to zoom in. I'm like, that's Ian O'Toole, right? Just to make sure, because
Yeah.
usually everything for him is just like simple block. Like it's beautiful, but it's flatter,
Yeah.
This is there's so much texture to it. They're like, make something steampunk, and he's like, oh yes, I'm gonna do it. And like early prototype stuff of the game boards and everything else, like it's just it's gonna be such a pretty game.
I think he had versions of this online, right? Some people were like play testing this.
It's on Tabletopia, invite only, I think, still, but you can join his Discord group, which I think there's a link somewhere on Board Game Geek. I'm in there, and he posts pretty regularly when he's doing play tests. I don't know if they're still playtesting this because the Kickstarter is like in 2 or 3 months now. So they might be done. But there was a long period of time for like 2 years there, all throughout the pandemic, where he was playtesting this game and you could go and try it out. I think I went in and watched one when he was doing like a partial teach because I didn't have time to play. But yeah, it's really pretty. I don't know. And like the cover really drove it home.
Yeah, and it looks like a really solid game. And there's so many different elements here at play, and it really has like you said, it's really pretty, great production. You get these really cool like screen printed meeple bots that kind of come into play here. So yeah, I think this is something you should take a look at. Take a look at now before it kind of comes up for purchase, because I think that this is a game that you're probably going to want to get to the table. I mean, he's done such a great job, and I think he's only getting better. So yeah, Weather Machine will be, I guess, hitting Kickstarter, right? I think this is going to be a Kickstarter game. Yep. So
big box Eagle Griffin game. I think they say Q4, so like October, November.
Sure. So it's going to be a little pricey if you put those things together.
Yep. 120-ish.
Remember games when games weren't pricey? That was like 4 years ago.
I don't remember. There was a pandemic in the middle there. I don't remember anything.
That's true. So yeah, Weather Machine, Q4, end of the 2000, probably be hitting your table probably in 22 or 2022, or God only knows at this point as far as time and space is concerned. All right,
they usually got stuff out in like a year, but I think right now, good luck.
Right now, we might see this game in 22, because between the cost of wood right now, the cost of transporting things, the pandemics, I mean, there's like everything, right? Everything's a thing right now. So, so definitely check this out. I think this is something that if you have not seen this yet, or if you're not normally a Vital Lacerda or O'Toole fan, I think this just might change your mind. I think that this game, at least the look of it, at least some of the playthroughs that I've read about, it seems like it does a little bit more than we've seen from other games. It's a little more streamlined. It's a little more thematic, and I think it's a little more fun. I think we're going to see this kind of game blow up. And Eagle Griffin does great production, typically each and every time. So yeah, good stuff. Right. All right, so Anthony, let's get on to our acquisition disorders, and we'll let people know if those games are a buy. They should run out and buy those games. Those games are a play. You should play those games. Those games are a dodge. So you should avoid those games. Or if those games are, in fact, the dreaded burn, because unfortunately that tends to happen. But please don't burn games. That causes, weather problems in the future, and we need a machine to shut them down. So recycle them or reuse them, or in fact, just don't buy them, because reduce, right? Reduce is the first thing, right?
Yep.
Reduce, reuse, and then recycle. Remember it. Those words are not interchangeable. reduce, reuse, recycle. All right, cool. So now that we have our ecological lesson here, let me talk about a game that I'm just going to tell you right from the start. You should reduce. You should just not even buy this game. All right. Now, one of the things about me, I don't go into too much detail about things in general about my personal life, but my background is counseling. So I love the idea of a game that's based around counseling, and in particular based around like intervention. So We Need to Talk came out in 2019, and what was really interesting right from the start was that this game was, or at least the artwork for this game, really kind of popped to me because if you ever watched way back, I don't know if it was like the early 2000s or late 90s, it's kind of hard to remember because again, COVID, Dr. Katz, the family therapist, you might remember it from like the Comedy Central, like the really kind of wavy artwork. And basically what he did was he interviewed comedians, in a kind of cartoon format, and usually they would just do their skit and he would just comment on it. So the artwork here was like, hey, I remember that from like the 90s or the 2000s. Again, whenever that time period actually happened, God only knows. So We Need to Talk is a ridiculous set of interventions for a ridiculous set of problems. So primarily in this game, what you're going to do, if you are the person that's being intervened upon, you are going to have a particular issue that needs to be addressed. So very simply, you're coming to the group, you don't know what the issue is, everyone is going to bring this intervention to you, and there are 3 rounds in this intervention. Everyone knows what your issue is, and they're going to get a card that says "We Need to Talk," and there are 274 cards, I believe, in here. A lot of cards for this game to play, and you're going to get something very out there. So, for the example card that I'll kind of talk about because I don't want to spoil anything is uncontrollable interpretive dancing. Now, that's what you're doing. That's what the intervention's all about. And now you have to deal with, the situation. So the first round, again, is very simple. Everyone's going to give you a clue because they're broaching the subject, but they're only allowed to give you 1 or 2 words that are related to the problem that you have. Now, everyone wants to give you good clues because as they give you good clues, you give them points. And then at the end of the game, if you don't get it, nobody gets points. So that's a particular issue. Eventually, once you go around and that doesn't get you anywhere, then there's round 2, emotional appeal. People describe how this problem makes you feel. And on this level, again, this is all up to your players at the table. So 1 or 2 words about interpretive dance. Again, it's a little difficult, but like they could say the way you move, right? They don't want to give you the actual word. When they talk about how do you feel about this, then it's going to be something like, I feel frustrated about this because, you don't really communicate well with me. So as the person at the table hearing these things, you have to understand 2 things. One is, if you've not looked at the cards in this game, you have no idea what people are giving you. And a lot of these cards in the game, a lot of these problems that you're having are, sometimes they're more simple and obvious. And I would say about 2/3 of the time they're really out there. So like, I don't want to give away things anything else, but again, I got a kind of a weird, very specific thing that I would never possibly guess. And I had my friends at the table who are very smart, intelligent people giving me the best clues that they could give me. And it was also weird because at the same time, you don't have a particular issue, at least not this issue. And you have your friends or people at the table going, I'm really bothered when you talk to me, or I'm really uncomfortable when you bring things up, or I'm really not happy with the way you feel about a certain thing. And you're like, I know this is a game and I know you're trying to give me clues, but I kind of feel bad about myself. Like, I can't help separating the 2 things. Or like they go like, what, I really think that you're really just out of your mind at this point. Like, they're just kind of giving you just, again, trying to help you with clues. So again, the second round is all about giving you an emotional feel, like I feel this way. And then finally, the third round is about offering solutions. Like, hey, I think that you should buy a new car. And you're like, how do all these things add up? you are given a good number of tokens to try to figure this out. And there's a little slider bar between how cold and how hot you are. And then at some point, the people who are at the table are supposed to, decide if you were close enough in order to get that guess correctly. My issue with the game is the issues you could possibly have are such, again, on such a wide spectrum that I don't know how well versed someone would have to be in this game to possibly give you the appropriate number of clues so that you can guess it. And again, the fault with the game is somehow, unfortunately, built in because they want them to be funny, right? They don't want to say your problem is kleptomania or you're a hoarder or something like that, right? They don't want to use like real world problems, but at the same time, like saying that you uncontrollably interpretive dance is like, how would you ever pull those two things together? And it's such a weird situation because there's no context to draw from other than the clues, but the clues are limited. The rationale is out there, and I was just uncomfortable with it. I was uncomfortable with, like, again, hearing things about me that weren't about me, but they were about the clue, but I couldn't figure out the clue. And again, you have multiple people giving clues, so they're not always the best clue, and you couldn't tie those things together. Some person is on one thematic kind of like drive, and the other person's on another thematic drive, and you're just like, I don't know. Like, what is this? So each time we went around, it was just it was disappointment and failure along the way. It's a good effort from Smirk and Laughter Games, and I appreciate it because I wanted this game to work, because this would be a lot of fun for me to use in a lot of different situations. But again, it's so broad and the questions have to be so specific that's very hard to conceive of, like, the random possibilities here. So it gets a hard dodge for me. I'm not going to give it a burn because I think the attempt here is genuine and there's nothing broken about it, but it gets probably the hardest dodge that I could give you on this. There's so many better party games out there than that.
Everything you said the whole time you're describing them, like, this sounds terribly uncomfortable. And I'm not a huge fan of party games. Like, I get uncomfortable playing Monikers or Time's Up or any of these other games where I have to, like, do things or anything reflects on me physically or emotionally in any way.
Yeah.
This does not sound fun. So I'm glad you say it's terrible because I don't want to play it.
And now you can emotionally distance yourself from a game that other people point at you and say, you have a problem with this thing, and it's so general that you don't understand that it's so wacky of the answer and you could never come up with it. So I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the effort here. I appreciate the artwork. I just wish it worked better.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our games at the table. Let's get on to our feature review. So, of course, my friends, it's our feature review, our 8th year anniversary. And Anthony and I are going to take a dive back into the games that we love to talk about in our acquisition disorders, the games we love to get the table at our tables, and, of course, our favorite feature review. All right, Anthony, so why don't you start us off with your favorite acquisition disorders from this year?
All right, my first one is a bit of a troll choice, but it is also something I'm most looking forward to still. You know what it is, because you can see the spreadsheet. It's the Isle of Cats. Don't forget the kittens. Yeah, there it is.
It was a nice 8-year run. That's all I have to say.
Come on.
We got far, and then all of a sudden everything got quiet all of a sudden, and this was it. This was the reason.
Yeah, it's the 4th time we've talked about Isle of Cats. I mean, you're immune to it by now.
Stop talking about it. My cat allergy translates to a board game cat allergy, so I can't.
That's
do it. That's
not good.
No,
I didn't know that happened. I'm allergic to all games with grass? Crud.
No one tell Anthony that cardboard's made from plants. Don't tell him that. He'll get very upset.
This is bad. I'm surrounded by cardboard right now. All right. Isle of Cats. Original game came out. It's up here somewhere. A couple years ago. I loved it. It's a polyomino card drafting game. Big puzzle. You can play it solo. You can play it with your family. They have family rules. You can play with a big group of people. It's like this very flexible game that manages to find all these different levels. If you like puzzly games, if you like cats, if you like silly fantasy pirate stuff, right? I happen to like all of that, so this game's great for me. Chris doesn't like any of that, so he's not happy.
I have not played it either, though. To be fair, I've not played it, and I will give it a look at, with gloves
okay,
on.
I'll take it. I'll take a look at it.
I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, so they ran another Kickstarter a few months ago. This was on my episode, 328. So this was actually about 3 months ago. And it's a pure expansion, right? You've got Kittens that come in, and you have solo, family, and standard game content. But this time you're getting 3 new expansions with all the content for this year. There is a big box, which I did go for because I have all this stuff. So I want to put it all in the big giant box, put it next to my stupid Suburbia box. And there was a explore and draw, so a roll and write type of game. I don't think I backed that because I don't need that. But everything else looked amazing. I'm super on board. I did get the pins because the pins are awesome as well. Cute little kitties. Yeah, so Isle of Cats, it's not supposed to come out until like next year sometime, but this is one of the ones I'm most excited about that we have talked about so far. So I had to give it its due, despite your chagrin.
All right, if you say so.
Yep, I had to do it.
As I said, it was a good run. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Some people are turning it off right now. Stop it.
Hey, it's a cliffhanger. Will there be a year 9? I don't know.
Anthony keeps talking about these stupid cats.
I mean, we're gonna switch to the cat and dog podcast. That might happen. Our good friend Tim, said us to switch things up, so it could happen. You're a cat guy. I'm a dog guy. I mean, I understand that. This is the point where Anthony goes, I'm not a cat guy. I'm a dog guy. And I'm going to like, no, man, I've seen you with the cats. It's over, man.
No. Cats live in the basement. Dogs outside the door. I'm just saying.
Nah, we've seen it on camera. If you watch on YouTube, you could see Anthony with cats.
There's literally one time the cat crawled in my lap, and you act like I'm the biggest cat guy because it happened to like a game with puzzle pieces that look like cats.
He does a Dr. Evil thing with the cat that's hilarious. So if you haven't seen YouTube yet, again, thank you for subscribing to YouTube, but subscribe for more cat videos with Anthony. And if you like cat videos with Anthony, let him know because he's going to produce that content for you.
This is false advertising. He's making it up.
It's not. All right. So let me talk about some acquisition disorders that are not feline friendly. So first up is On Mars, Alien Invasion, of course, by Lacerda and Eno Tool. Now, why this was one of my favorite acquisition disorders and games I backed on Kickstarter was because Anthony was talking about, Eno Tool's artwork kind of finally like being free. Like it could do just different things than other than just a very clean design. And the same thing for Lacerda, again, producing wonderful thematic board games out there. But this one here, the On Mars Alien Invasion, does something different as far as the expansion is concerned. And ironically, I do have something to talk about that later as far as my favorite feature review. But basically, it really takes what is a Euro game and it turns it upside down on its head because there are 3 different, I guess in total 4 different chapters, depending on how you look at it. But there are 4 different chapters in this game. And by 4 different chapters, 4 different modules that you can play in this game. And then the game plays different. And I love that about an expansion, that it just like, it's not more of the same. It's taking the base game and making 4 different games out of it. And I'm just like, okay, I'm on board for that, And the artwork here, again, is kind of different. It's really kind of like this kind of creepy alien artwork. The meeples are fantastic. The production's top notch. If you've kind of liked On Mars, this was an expansion that you really should take a look at because, again, it's going to give you more than just what you already like. It's going to give you a different way to play the game. And I love that because I love Euros, but at some point they do become rote. Like, what the best moves are, what the best places are, what kind of strategies you want to follow. Here, you get to play different games with the same thing. Now, I do also have one other acquisition disorder that really stood out for me, and that was Villagers Shifting Seasons. Now, for me, Villagers, when it first came out just blew me away. I did not expect as much gameplay out of this very tightly packed box. And I was just like really thrilled about the whole situation that they were coming out with an expansion because, again, you just want more content with those great games. So this expansion does, in some cases, what most expansions do. It has those global effect cards. It has a new resource that comes into play, a new kind of solo mode that's available, and more of the same as far as special villagers are concerned. But the price point and the gameplay with villagers has always been top notch. So if you didn't pick it up previously, this was a really great time to do so. All right, Anthony, what about
Yeah.
you? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny. I can't make fun of you because I backed both of those Kickstarters as well. I know. Like On Mars was our game of the year for
Yeah,
a reason. We both loved it. And Villagers, I'm the one who introduced it to you.
you
So
did.
obviously we both love that. Um, so my other one, which I think is a game that, if nothing else, you're ambivalent towards, is Paperback Adventures. So this one was up on Kickstarter a little while ago. It was on episode 326, so a couple weeks before Isle of Cats. And it is a solo only version of Paperback that
Mm-hmm.
was released on Kickstarter. Paperback being a deck building game in which you're building words and, pretty basic deck building rules.
Mm-hmm.
Hardback is one of my favorite games of all time. It's in my top 100. It's a iteration on Paperback, and so this is the revised, refined campaign version of the solo rules of Paperback, which are very good. It's a lot of fun. So they've basically turned this word building game into a roguelike deck builder, which is so cool to me because I like all of those things, right? So you have, there's all these roguelike deck builders that are on Steam right now, like video game wise, and they're like, let's make a card game version of it because this is kind of where all these mechanics started, and this is what this is. So I'm all about this. Tim Fowers, I love all of his games. You can't go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Goldsberry's artwork is perfect for the Paperback universe, and super psyched for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I own Paperback, I own Hardback, I own, I don't know, it feels like at least another half dozen of his other games, Word Domination, Burgle Brothers. So no, I'm on board with Fowers. I think at some point I was steadily collecting his games. I wasn't sure about the solo mode, so that was one of the things I wasn't too sure about. But yeah, Hardback is awesome. I mean, his games have been great, and
Yeah,
they're a lot of game in a very small box for a very reasonable price. And considering how board games going, if I had to make
right,
one suggestion to people about purchasing power, it would probably be from Sinister's Fish, Villagers, and Streets, and then for Fowers games, anything Fowers produces, because again,
right.
they're so small, compact, and they're busting. Like they have so much value to them. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's absolutely a great pick on that too. All right, Anthony, let's get on to the games that actually hit your table this year. What was the tops of the tops for you?
All right, so I got two. Again, we're doing two here, and they had to be solo games because from August of last year until August of this year, it was 90% solo gaming. Right, very short window there in the spring where everybody's vaccinated, everybody's healthy, we're all safe. Let's play some games, but then kind of back to solo gaming now the last couple months.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first one for me is Lost Ruins of Arnak. This was my review on episode 298. I gave it an emphatic buy. It ended up on my top 100 list at number 18, like a month later. And it's probably even grown more so since then. I play this game a lot. The solo version of this was very good. And then they released a solo campaign, which was amazing. Like, if you have not played that yet and you like solo gaming or you like Lost Ruins of Arnak, I highly recommend you go play that.
Mm-hmm.
They also have an expansion coming out soon, which is going to add like asymmetrical abilities, starting powers, and some new cards and stuff. Definitely
It's
check that
awesome.
out when it comes out. But just all around, this was, one of, if not maybe the favorite game of mine from last year. Again, On Mars kind of won out, but this is the game I played the most by far. And it's online now too. You can play it on Board Game Arena. Just all the different things. Like, their marketing plan on this was just spot on. Once it hit, they took off with it. So this game, not only in terms of like when I reviewed it, because it surprised me. It was like one of those things that showed up as a review copy alongside Under Falling Skies, which is the game I expected to fall in love with and didn't even play for 6 months. And I was like, oh, I'll try this one out, and I just fell head over heels for it. So Lost Ruins of Arnak definitely is my favorite review of the last year. The other game I wanted to mention, again, just kind of on that solo train, is Root, the Clockwork expansion.
Mm-hmm.
So there was new Root content that came out at the beginning of 2020 with the Underworld expansion, which I reviewed at the time when I was still playing with people, and I played a bunch of times with the new factions. But the Clockwork expansion also came in with that Kickstarter release, and this is 4 different Clockwork factions that you can play as from the original release of the game. And there was one original, like the Clockwork Marquee from the original release of the game, which was not great. It was fine. You could play it solo, but it wasn't great. And then there were like better ones you could do online. And they kind of iterated and improved based on those online ones. And now we have the Clockwork expansion, which is amazing. It does such a good job of like replicating what these factions should do in a game. So whether you're practicing playing the game and just want to give it a go against the Clockwork things, or you're trying to play 2 players and you're like, 2-player and Root is not great, so let's add in a Clockwork. Whatever you want to do there, it's really, really cool. I played this a bunch last year, and I guess this year, mostly early this year in January, February. And I'm very much looking forward to the second batch of Clockwork expansion stuff that's going to come with the next expansion, the Marauder expansion, next year when that ships.
Yeah, no, both fantastic. I haven't played the Clockwork expansion, but obviously got a chance to play Runes of Arnak and loved it. I thought it was a fantastic game out of left field. I guess, CGE for a long time just hadn't brought out like a new big box game. I mean, I think we both like Sanctum, but it
Yep.
was like, oh, that was kind of a weird thing for them to bring out. Good, but kind of a weird thing out of left field. And this was just like right down the middle for them. This
Yep.
was absolutely CGE through and through. And everything about the game was high quality and just, I don't know, it blew me away too. I thought it was a great game. And I can't believe the expansion's coming out as fast as it is. And I'm really happy about that because, again, it's one of those situations where I'm just like, oh, yeah, more. Like,
Yeah.
we could have more of the thing that we like.
Yay, more thing. And the thing we should mention about Arnak too, because we talk about like crazy prices all the time, like these games costing.
Yeah.
The Weather Machine's going to be like $120 on Kickstarter. Lost Ruins of Arnak is $60. You can get it online for like 40 something. It is 100% worth that price.
It is.
It's not even. They could have charged 80 for it. They easily could have charged 80 and people would have paid it. And they didn't, which is amazing.
Yeah.
CGE, you're awesome.
Shh, don't tell them. They're going to charge 80 now. Damn it,
No,
Anthony.
they're not. Because they're awesome. They're not going to do it.
All right. No, I agree. I mean, as far as like, value for the components are great. The board's great. The artwork's great. The graphic design's great. I look, we can go into this more detail, but again, in the show notes will be all of the episode numbers along with our recommendations here. If you haven't listened to those episodes, or if you have, jump back because, again, we feel like it's worthy to jump back to those episodes. So, Anthony, I'm going to talk about 2 of my favorite games this year. Obviously, as you said, it's a little bit of a different year with, I don't know, things happening. Let's just call it things happening and just move on for the moment.
Okay.
Praga, Caput, Regni. This was a game from one of my favorite designers, and I know yours. You got a chance to play this too, right?
I did. Solo only. Probably the same for you, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I got to play this with a group as well.
Oh, good.
Once
Good.
we got a little clear on that, but there were 2 solo modes. One solo mode that came in the game, and then one solo mode you can kind of download that was a better version. The initial solo mode with the game is just not good because it really doesn't scale very well for that solo play. And then it's just like you're just, I don't know, you're running the machine just to run the machine. But this is from one of, if not my favorite designers, Vladimir Suchi here. And what was just blew us away initially, and I believe I had this as an acquisition disorder way back when, was this is a really long, beautiful piece of artwork that they're claiming is a game board, but it is. It's a game board.
Yeah.
And then on top of which are these 3D elements, the very famous bridge and these kind of like castle buildings where you can kind of move up. And basically you are touring and building up. And there's a lot to like about this game, but it really is not shown in the single player. You have to play this ideally at the 4-player count. I know BGG says 3 is best. It's not. It's 4 because you do need to have that competition, and you do need to be able to build up the city in order for everyone to benefit off the bonuses. That's the one kind of failing grace with the game, is that, yeah, you can play solo, or you can play 2 players, even 3 players, and kind of put stuff out there, but you really want to be able to benefit when someone actually builds something. It should be more dynamic to that end. So, again, this is a game that, I think you could pick it up for about $65, and maybe a little bit cheaper on some online sources, but still a very good value if you do play at the higher player counts, because it does not scale well for that. But fantastic game, definitely worth the play, and really glad to have it at the table. The second game is a game that also I talked about that I think for many of us out there has been kind of stuck in transit for a lot of us. This is Nidavellir. This was a game about dwarves trying to put together the best team possible to kind of track down a dragon and just, mess him up for all the things that he did. And really, the thing here about this dwarven kingdom that kind of came together is that the artwork was so unique. It was a really kind of like artistic depiction of these dwarves that all come from different classes, whether they're blacksmiths or warriors or explorers or hunters or miners. And as you do that set collection, you get different bonuses. So there's a lot of ways to score points in this game, but it's a bidding situation where you don't just have your normal bids and you see if you win or you lose, but you're also able to upgrade your bids as the thing goes on. So you have your, like, I guess like 4 coins that you're able to bid in the game, and then you're able to kind of like, you can bid on certain things. You still have your 0, so there's multiple opportunities to bid, put your 3 bids out there, make them high, but also you can combine the 2 ones that left over. So you could have 5 coins out there and play, and then you get the bonuses in the midway through. And then there's all these kind of special cards. There's a whole section of special cards that come into play if you're able to pull the appropriate number of cards together or have the most in those kind of situations. And then it's just like, and then it really opens the game up to a second level. So this was a game that I was, really highly anticipating because the artwork and the production was so good. But I was really glad to find that it was a game that I could actually get to play each and every time with people, because there were multiple ways to play the game, and the coin building system was very unique. It was almost like a deck building system where, like, I'm going to cash these in and get something better, and then maybe later in the rounds get something that might actually benefit me. So it wasn't a standard kind of like auction kind of situation. So great game, set collection, card drafting, your typical victory point game, a lot of fun. Definitely check it out.
Awesome. Yeah, that's not a game I've had a chance to play yet for the reasons you mentioned. But Praga, Caput, Regni, it's good.
Yeah.
Remember, I gave it a play. I don't know if I reviewed it on the show or not, but like my final decision on that was a play. But I need to play it with people, I think.
You got to play with people. It doesn't scale well. It doesn't have that board is beautiful, but it doesn't really have the ability to scale very well.
Right.
So definitely some good games to check out this year. There's so many more. Definitely check back on our episodes on that. All right, Anthony, that leads us to our final feature review, which is our best feature from the year.
Yeah, absolutely. So we ran a little bit of an experiment with the show for several months over the course of the last year, where we did live versions of BGA on Board Game Arena on their Twitch channel. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the shows are fairly similar. Like, you probably heard them and didn't notice a huge difference. But one episode we did that I really enjoyed, and the feature in particular, was our ultimate Uwe Rosenberg tier list. Mm-hmm. This was on episode 312. And, the audio is absolutely available to you if you want to listen to it that way. And sounds great. Obviously, Chris, you did an amazing job editing it and making everything make sense and not just like, look at that, which is never fun in audio. But if you want the full experience, the video from that segment of the show is on YouTube. So you can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/boardgamers anonymous. And the Ultimate Uwe Rosenberg tier list is there from February 13th, 2021. And it's us running through 34 of Uwe Rosenberg's games, making a tier list from our typical levels from buy, or I think we even had a level above buy, right? It was like ultimate.
We did.
What was the name of that? It was essential, right?
Yeah.
So essential, buy, play, dodge, burn. And we did all 34 of his games that either of us recognized, because there was a few oddballs from like 20 years ago that were like, what is that? And it was a lot of fun. And when we got to the end, there was some contentiousness about a few games. If you look at the comments on YouTube, you'll see that many people agree with me about Newsfjord. So that was fun. But yeah, no, that was a blast. It's one of those things that we've, hope to come back to, like once we're both settled, obviously with all the moving and everything. Recording video is not super easy, but it was just a lot of fun to do, and just to kind of run through one of our favorite designers and discuss everything of his that we've played or touched on and where it kind of ranks in a fun, tongue-in-cheek kind of way.
Yeah, I brought this up to you as a an opportunity or an experiment, and I'm really glad that you were game to go along with this. I mean, big kind of shocker here. You and I are anime fans. I don't know how.
Right.
Jeez, they play board games and they like anime. Oh. So it's one of those situations where you probably, if you're an anime fan, have come across these tier lists. And it's typically all about the strongest anime characters out there. So you have your special level, at the tippity top. And obviously, if you're going to think about, managing and like organizing something that's the same but also different, it would be Uwe Rosenberg games, because they're also like, they're variations of each other as far as like, from like normal human to like Ultra Max Super Saiyan Legendary God mode, right?
Right.
Whatever the mode is this week, because there's always a new mode. So yeah, and that was that kind of idea. Yeah, and I think, and again, I think that's one of those things that's really important to know, because some designers like Uwe Rosenberg, they are constantly refining their design, which is fantastic. But at some point, like, you got to pick one of those games. You got to just. And, it's, he's got his puzzle games, and he's got his, all of the wide range variations of farming and farming-like games out there. So, yeah, I think they're a lot of fun. And I think that those are, lists that we will definitely do moving forward in the future. I don't think anyone is as unique as Uwe Rosenberg as far as, like, those kind of power levels and the same thing. But I think we should definitely come back to that. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, I think, we'll see. We'll see what we can do with that.
If any of you have a great idea for a tier list that you would like to see, let us know. In a couple months, when we get video equipment in place and studios set up, we will absolutely revisit that. Yeah.
And Ray Colt isn't as bad of a game as Anthony says. So there. But
neither is Newsfjord.
I didn't say that. Well, look at the list. Look at the
Feast.
Oh, come on. Your bread is shaped this way, your crown is shaped this way, and somehow you flip it over and it's an olive.
You got a problem with the aesthetics? The game's great, man. I don't know what you want.
So bad. All right. So an episode, a less controversial episode, so to speak, is the feature review, which was the top 10 board game expansion types. Now, it's not the top 10 board game expansions. We've already done that several times as they kind of, revised and there's new ones come up. But we actually did research on this. We actually went through all of the top expansions and looked for the underlying themes, the underlying productions. And really, when designers decide to come out with an expansion, typically it breaks down to one of these 10 possibilities. And some of these possibilities are better than others. So when you look at board game expansions, you can kind of get a sense of like, hey, is this just a solo mode? Or is this a 5-player game mode, which Anthony, of course, hates right off the bat? Or is it
Ah.
more of the same? Does it add, an extra resource? But there are 10 variations, or slightly more in some cases, but there are 10 variations of this. And it's really a lot of fun to think about when you think about your expansions. Which kind of versions of expansions do you like to get to the table? I've already talked about On Mars having this kind of different module system, and then even Villager Shifting Seasons having this global effect kind of system. So a lot of things are occurring in the expansions that we see. So in the future, probably these board games are going to have more of the same, which means these expansion types will come up in the future. And it's also a lot of fun to kind of play with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was a fun episode. Not just to do, because there's like 2 levels to this, and you guys don't always see the back half of what we're doing. But the research itself can be fun. Sometimes it's not fun. Sometimes it's like, I got to find one more sports game for this Olympics thing. And there aren't any. But sometimes it's like, how do we take all these different expansions, and these are my favorites, and how do we categorize them and build these different things, and how do we make 10 of those? And that was a lot of fun to do. And then to kind of run through them and break it down in a way that made sense for not only you all, the regular listeners, but somebody who maybe just stumbles upon that list someday, new to the hobby, and says, okay, now I understand how board game expansions work. It was fun to do. It was a cool idea.
Yeah, and again, some of those expansions are standards because they're standards. It makes sense that, you may need extra player colors or extra players or solo modes or more of the same, and a lot of those things make sense. And then there's some extraordinary stuff. So if you haven't checked out those episodes, check back. All of these special episodes, our favorite acquisition disorders, our favorite at the tables, our favorite features, will be in the episode guide. So you can find those episodes and check those things out. Please do. They're a lot of fun. We've been doing episodes for 8 years, and we try to make them as evergreen as possible so that this way you have an archive just in case, let's say, I don't know, you get quarantined for a ridiculous amount of time and you want something to listen to, and you want to listen to your friends talk about board games and you can't get to them. So you're like, hey, what about my podcaster friends? They're talking about board games. And like, yeah, man, we got you covered. 8 years. 8 years, buddy. We got
Still
you.
Here.
So that's our feature review. All right, everyone. We hope that you enjoyed our 8th anniversary, looking back at the latest and greatest in board games. We've been so glad and appreciative of you listening each and every week. Putting out an episode each and every week is challenging. Is it difficult? Is expensive in some cases? But we do it because we really love having this contact with you, having this time with you, sharing board games with you, and we hope to do so in the future. So until then, everyone, please keep safe. Stay safe at the table so that when the convention season does come around safely, we'll all be able to join together at the table. Anthony,
Absolutely.
anything on our way out?
Yeah, man. I mean, everything you said was amazing. You guys are all amazing. And this year in particular, this whole last 12 months has been trying in many ways. But it's, one of the things that keeps us going is knowing that you're out there listening, playing some of the games we're talking about, commenting on our questions of the day, engaging with us on Discord, supporting us on Patreon, all these different things. It keeps us going, keeps us doing the show because it's fun, it's engaging for us, but it's also just really nice to know that you're out there. And that's why we keep doing it. So 8 years and counting. We'll be here next year for year 9.
I like your enthusiasm, kid. It's going to take us far.
Yeah. Unless there's another Isle of Cats Kickstarter, and then it's done.
I tell you. No, it's important. Like, again, Anthony, our friendship over, it's been a decade now. It's been longer than the podcast has been going. Sure. It's very important and appreciative. And obviously, it's challenging dealing with board game industry just in general for so many reasons, especially the last 2 years. If you've seen anything about board gaming, you're like, oh, I had no idea all of those things were there. Like, yeah, they were all there. So, it's been a journey, my friend. I'm glad to have you along with me. And again, there's been plenty of challenges throughout the way, plenty of challenging people, and thankfully, plenty of challenging games to get to the table. So it's been a joyous adventure. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, everyone. We look forward to joining you next time. Until next time, though, this is Chris.
And this is Anthony.
And after 8 years, we're so glad to have you join us at the table. Take care, everyone.
Take care.